Good afternoon everybody. My microphone's on. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are joining me on the planet. My name is June Allen and I'm the founder of The Art of Greatness at juneallen.net. So hello everybody, I hope everyone's doing well in these crazy times. So today is my sobriety birthday. Today is the first day today was the first day 10 years ago that I wrote my first step question in the recovery room. So huge feat, really excited. So I'm going to be sharing some wisdom, some tools, some insights, some vulnerabilities, all of that kind of stuff today. I'm just feeling really excited about today. So I'm really grateful. So for those of you that don't know anything about my work, I came into recovery. I started in recovery in 2009. I got my first sponsor in 2010. And thank you, Marie. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I went into recovery as a result of being in addictive relationships. I found myself in relationships that were really abusive, that were codependent, that just weren't really good for me. So I knew that I needed to make some changes. So I went into 12-step recovery and went through the 12 steps, had a great time, learned a lot about myself, learned a lot about people. But what was missing was the cultural context. I didn't have the language or the understanding or insights to be able to understand how being a black woman, still living under the system of racism, what does that mean in terms of my healing process? How does that work? How am I even going to begin to understand and kind of join the dots between, what happened to my ancestors on the plantation and what's going on with me today? I knew there was a link, but there was nothing in the recovery rooms in the steps that actually did that. It was able to help me understand what all that was about. So I then became obsessed with reading loads of books. I read a lot of articles, listened to loads of different things, and just loads of stuff just started making so much more sense. And then I began training as a psychotherapist as well. And then even more stuff started coming up, and it just made so much sense for me to be able to understand my own trauma from a black perspective, from a cultural perspective. There wasn't that many black people in recovery at the time when I started doing this work. So then I began to sort of, ask them to have more conversations around it. And it was really powerful. It was really powerful. And I just started understanding a lot more. And then about 4 or 5 years ago, I started sharing about this stuff a lot more publicly. And people started asking me for support, asking me what I'd learned. I started sharing a lot more and more stuff, and people just started getting it. And, I did a lot of service and stuff in the recovery rooms as well. And, even now, the meetings and stuff like that, I see people benefiting from, a lot of the research that I was able to do and put out to do service and stuff for for other black people that are in recovery. So I just feel really grateful to be in this situation now where I'm sort of 10 years in, still in the rooms. I still go to meetings and still doing a lot of service as well, So I'm just really grateful. So that's a little bit about me and how I got into doing this work. So I'm a mum. I'm also a retreat facilitator. And like I said before, I'm a student psychotherapist as well. I passed my foundation with a distinction. And then I've just recently passed my level 2, and I'm now, it's hard work trying to do my level 3 at the moment with all this stuff going on. But I am crawling through my level 3 at the moment as we speak. So I'm still committed to doing the work, and it's really powerful being able to do that work and still sharing all the stuff that I'm learning as I'm going along. I'm translating it into a cultural perspective and then sharing it with my community. So it's been a really powerful journey. So before we get into the content and stuff, thanks for joining. I'm going to just show a little bit of housekeeping. So with everything that's going on, I know there's a lot of stress, a lot of anger, a lot of pain that a lot of us, are experiencing at the moment. So I have a free ebook on how to manage racial stress. and it basically talks you through how to deal with your anger, how to deal with the grief, what you can do, all of that kind of stuff. So if you click the link in the bio, go to heal.juneallen.net. That's heal.juneallen.net. That's heal.juneallen.net. You can find the free ebook there. Okay. So the next bit of housekeeping is that I also have, because it's my birthday, I have to, I wanted to give a freebie as well, which is all about, there's some racial sobriety speakers that I did a conference last year around the same time, and it was really good just to be able to talk about recovery and racism from a cultural perspective and what it means to be a black person or person of colour. Hi, thanks for joining Under the System of Racism. So and just exploring the system of racism from a recovery perspective, and I had loads of speakers and stuff on, but I put some of the speakers, I actually I put them in a PDF and gave them away, because obviously that was my kind of bit of service that I wanted to do around that topic. So if you click the link in the bio and go to heal.juneallen.net, you can also get those speakers, and the topics are interracial sponsorship, okay, the power of cultural top and bottom lines, self-acceptance and food addiction, unworthiness and under-earning, trauma, codependency and relationship addiction. So I have different speakers and stuff that came on and spoke about all these different things, people that are also in recovery. If you click the link in the bio, you can find those are all free. You get it in one PDF, you get those things. So click over to my website and get those. The final thing that I have is that I have a racial sobriety Work It bundle on offer at the moment, £25 versus £49, and it's just a series of 7 videos that I have: freedom from addiction to self-hate, the characteristics of racial codependency, 3 ways to deal with racism in the recovery rooms, what do racial boundaries look like, 5 ways racial sobriety opens you up to more love, the seasons of racial sobriety and the promises of racial sobriety. So if you're new to this whole concept, if you're in recovery and you're looking to start exploring the link between racism and addiction and how that kind of contributes to all of your acting out and stuff like that, then the Work It bundle is a great place to start. Okay, so click the link in the bio, go to heal.juneallen.net. That's heal.juneallen.net. That's heal.juneallen.net. So that is the housekeeping. So for those of you that have just joined, my name is June Allen and I'm the founder of The Art of Greatness at juneallen.net, and I teach African-centered self-love, sisterhood and sobriety. And today's my sobriety birthday. I'm 10 years old. 10 years old in recovery. Very grateful to be doing this work, and just loving it all. So I'm a retreat facilitator, I'm a mom, I'm a student psychotherapist, all that good stuff. And today I am sharing 10 things I've learned in recovery, 10 things that I've learned in recovery that have allowed me to be on this platform sharing all of this juicy, empowering stuff with you today. Okay, so the first thing that I've learned is that racism is an addiction to power. Okay, thank you, Renee. Racism is an addiction to power. Okay, when we think about addiction, we normally think about it in terms of alcohol or drugs or, gambling or whatever it is, food, whatever it is. People think of addiction in those terms. But I think the thing that I've learned about addiction is not just about substances. Okay, you can be addicted to anything. Okay, the definition of addiction is when you keep doing the same thing over and over again and you can't stop doing that thing, even if it causes harm to you or other people. Okay, that thing, you just can't stop doing it over and over and over again. Okay, because even though it's harming yourself or harming other people, you just keep doing it. Okay, that's kind of like the broad definition of addiction. So you act out in certain ways in order to deal with the internal stuff that you just can't face. You're always you're just acting out, and acting out can be, it shows up in different ways. And I believe that racism is an addiction to power. And if you know Dr. Welsing's work, Dr. Frances Cress Welsing was a therapist. She's an ancestor now, God bless her. But her work, she talked about how the reason why racism is the way it is, and she talks about the psychology of racism, is because that underneath all of the violence and all of the acting out and all of the hate and everything that white supremacy does towards us as people of colour, is because there's a deep fear of white genetic annihilation. Now she says that because if you think about genetics, if when there's a black partner and a white partner, if they have a child, that child generally, turns up black. Okay, so if we use people like Bob Marley, Barack Obama as a couple of examples, you'll see that they look black. Okay, so when we think about that, if people continue to race mix and all the rest of it, it means that within a couple of generations, white people could be extinct, because there are studies out now at the moment which say that white people are dying quicker than they are having babies. So underneath all of that is a deep fear of white people becoming extinct. So if you're talking about the white supremacists at the extreme far right, they're the ones that they don't care. They're just killing black people. They don't care. So when you see all of this going on, they don't care whether we're hurting. They don't care whether it's destroying our communities. They're not going to stop doing it, because underneath all of that, they feel that they need to. That's why when they start talking about they fear for their life and all that rubbish. That's what's underneath all of that. It's a lot of it's unconscious. Okay, a lot of it is unconscious. Not everybody's going to go to the extreme and start murdering black people like really blatantly. Those people are doing that, but there's that end of the spectrum, and then there's also the other end of the spectrum where racism is a lot more subtle, it's a lot more microaggression, but it's all addiction to power. Okay, addiction to power. Hi, thanks for joining. So once I understood that concept, that it was a disease, there was a sickness, it just became a lot easier for me to kind of not internalize it and not take it personally, because it ain't got nothing to do with me. Racism ain't got nothing to do with me. And I found a lot of peace in that. Don't get me wrong. I get, the way that the oppression and the violence and all of that kind of stuff, of course it impacts me in that sense. But I see it through a different lens now. I see it through a different lens because I understand the same reason that I wouldn't try and convince an alcoholic to stop drinking. I'm not going to beg white people to stop practicing white supremacy, because I don't have any control over that, and I'm going to become insane if I focus my energy on trying to get white people to stop practicing white supremacy. My responsibility in recovery is to focus on how I'm responding to it, and then set the boundaries that I need to set in order to keep myself safe. That's the way that I look at it. So that understanding of racism being an addiction to power was really powerful, and it really, hi, thank you, Michael, for saying happy birthday. I appreciate that. So yeah, it was just an amazing revelation for me to have that. And also it just, there was when people behave a certain way, I just think this is nothing to do with me. This has got nothing to do with me. It's white people that practice white supremacy. They're the ones that got the issue. It ain't got nothing to do with me. Ain't got nothing to do with me. So anyway, that's number one. That was the thing that was a real revelation to me to realize that. Okay, so number two, the second thing that I learned over these 10 years is that even in recovery, there's racism is in the rooms. Racism is in the recovery rooms, and white people are not going to rescue you. White people were certainly not going to rescue me from the work that I needed to do around this racial sobriety stuff, because ultimately white people are not doing this work, even in recovery. There was nothing that I saw. I mean, obviously I've not been in every single recovery room, I'm in a few fellowships, but I'm not in all fellowships, so I don't know everything about every single fellowship group. But there was nothing that I saw in those books that were linked to how to actually deal with racism. And, most of the stuff that I have seen where black people are talking about recovery and stuff like that, a lot of them are just talking about, they've just all been kumbaya about it. No one's really telling the truth. No one's really telling the truth. And I say that because, obviously a lot of the people that are in positions of power, the people that are writing the books and all the rest of it, a lot of them are written by white people, or they're managed by white people. They might have black people writing, telling them the stories, but ultimately white people are managing those spaces. And so, they've just been all kumbaya. So Blackfoot 33 saying, yes, it is in the rooms of recovery, sister. Listen, I don't joke. And then a lot of the people that know me about this stuff, they know I don't joke when it comes to this stuff. And a lot of people don't want to hear it, but it's the truth. It's the truth. Racism is in the recovery rooms, and I have experienced a lot of it. And I have had a lot of, trust me when I say I've had a lot of people come to me and tell me certain things about what's been going on, and and just the blatant racism that goes on in the rooms. And and at the end of the day, this is why I speak up so much about it, because how can we go into spaces that are supposed to be safe, that's supposed to be about our healing, but yet we can't talk about that part of our journey? And it's because there's white people have not had to experience it. White people, they it's something that they don't, because they don't experience it, doesn't impact them. They don't understand. So Blackfoot 33 is saying, God bless you on your 10 years clean. September will be the first. I have 9 years. Yay! Oh my God. Listen, I get so excited when I hear other black people in recovery. If you want more recovery resources, if you want more recovery resources around racial sobriety, click the link in the bio, go to heal.june, or you can go to theblacksteps.com. I'm going to say that once. So you can click the link in the bio, or you can go to theblacksteps.com. There's loads of information there about racial sobriety. You can sign up. There's loads of free tools. Again, there's the offers and stuff that are on, but sign up, because I'm going to be talking a lot more about all of this stuff, because it's my 10-year anniversary. I'm going to be talking a lot about sobriety and stuff this week. So white people in the recovery rooms they're not going to rescue you. They're not going to rescue you because they don't have the tools, and it's inappropriate. It's inappropriate. A lot of them don't want to talk about racism. I've been in several situations where I've had, I've created, what I thought were really deep friendships with people in recovery, and as soon as I start talking about racism, the phone stops ringing. The phone stops ringing, all of a sudden they're not available. That's happened to me multiple times. I've put up, posters in certain buildings about recovery spaces that are specifically for people of colour, and have had racist abuse drawn all over them and all that. It's just been horrendous, some of it. But they ain't going to shut me out. I am not going to stop talking about this at the end of the day, because it's important. It's important, and I ain't going to stop talking about it. And my conversation, what I've learned as well in recovery, and this whole thing about white people not rescuing you, is that these conversations are not for white people anyway. I'm not talking to white people about this stuff. The narrative is not for them. It's for you. It's for black people. It's for black people. This is who I'm talking to when it comes to this stuff, because a lot of the times, I'm not saying that other people of colour don't experience somebody's laughing at me. I don't even waste my time talking about racism with white people. I stopped talking about white people. I stopped talking about it to white people for a long time. I ain't got time for it, because they're not doing the work. They're not doing this work. So what's the point? For me, it's a waste of energy. I want to work with the people that want to do the work. If any white people come to me and say, because some people will say, I do watch your live streams and whatever, I just point them in the direction of books that they can read. But I don't, my narrative is not for white people. And I say that without apology. Okay? It's not for white people. The work is for black people who want to do this work, who want to do the internal work, who want to understand internalized racism, who want to deal with the generations of trauma and pain and whatever that we're going through, the stress of living under the system. That's who the narrative is for. I don't really, that narrative talking directly to white people is not my thing. Okay, so that's just the way it is, point blank period, and I don't apologize for it. So anyway, that's number 2. Okay, white people are not going to rescue you, and they're in the recovery rooms. Okay, number 3. Okay, you learn to trust by trusting. Okay, number 3 is you learn to trust by trusting. Now there's a lot of stuff that goes on in the community. Black people don't trust each other. How are we going to have how are we going to have a community? When are we going to come together and all the rest of it? But the reason why so many of us don't trust each other is because we haven't had the opportunity or the places or the boundaried spaces to be able to process the hurt that we've experienced by people that look like us. Okay, a lot of us have been raised in families where the internalized racism, the internalized trauma, the recycled trauma has been playing out in our families, and we haven't had a space to be able to process it. So we get triggered by our own blackness. We get triggered by our own people. Okay, so don't be in a hurry to shame other black people, to start saying things to other black people that don't trust other black people, because there's a reason why a lot of black people don't trust other people, and we don't trust each other. Okay, so the solution to that is you have to be doing your own work. this is why, for me, why recovery has been so powerful, because I had to do the internal stuff. Okay, I had to do the racial sobriety stuff. I couldn't have done the racial sobriety stuff first, because I'd have just been too overwhelmed. I'd have just been too overwhelmed. And, it's funny because, and this was not a conscious thing, but when I started doing the work in recovery, I found, being around black people so triggering and so painful. And I didn't understand why. But I just knew I experienced like deep pain when I found like I had to get vulnerable, or around other black people. I found myself, looking for older white women to kind of rescue me and kind of be this pseudo parent, and I understand now that was because I was so traumatized by the stuff that happened to me when I was a child, the stuff that I witnessed as a child, internalized racism growing up and all of that kind of stuff. I found it really painful to be emotionally intimate with other black people in recovery. It was just too much. Even my therapist was the same. Like I saw a few white therapists before I had the courage to go and find a black one, because I was just too triggered by other black people. So, recovery gave me the tools and the understanding to understand myself as a human being. Thank you, Corinne. Thanks for joining, and thank you for the congratulations. It gave me the tools to be able to understand who I was as a human being first, and as a woman next, and all the rest of it. And and then after about being in recovery for about 2 or 3 years, I was kind of like slapped with this massive wall of pain. Like, oh my God, I'm a black person. And I know that sounds really weird, but that's basically how it was. It was like, oh my God, I'm a black person. Not only am I a black person, but I have all of this pain and all of this trauma that I had no idea that I was carrying, and I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't know how to articulate. I didn't have the language to articulate what was going on, how I felt. I didn't understand it. But after being in recovery, and the layers came off really, really gently, I was able to understand, and I couldn't hide from my blackness anymore. It got to the point where it was so excruciating. And I remember having this conversation with my white sponsor at the time. She was an amazing woman. And even now, I still, she's on my social media and stuff. And sometimes she'll say different things. But yeah, I remember having the conversation with her, and she was just like, you know what, they got to a point where in the sponsorship where, she was like, you need to find your people. You need to go and find your people, because she didn't have the identification. And I'm so grateful for the relationship that I had with her, because she was so gracious at that time when it was time for me to move on. She knew it was time for me to move on, and she pushed me to move on. And now, she'll kind of, she'll post stuff on my social media saying, I learned so much from you and stuff like that. And it was amazing having her as part of my journey. But I just needed to, it was time for me to move on. So Christina's Powell saying, can you talk a little more about emotional sobriety? It sounds like a really powerful process, not just a moment. Oh gosh, yeah, emotional sobriety. Okay, so you're talking about emotional sobriety or racial sobriety? Okay, just clarify that. If you're talking about emotional sobriety or racial sobriety, I'll talk about emotional sobriety first. So emotional sobriety is basically your relationship with your humanity. Your emotions are, I always say that your emotions are like a new language. Emotional. Okay. So your emotions are like a new language that you need to learn. So the thing about us as black people is that racism, the reason why racism has been able to control so many of us is because we've been beaten down into this place where we're not allowed to feel our emotion. We're numb, a lot of us, okay? And this can be passed down right from the plantations, and we've carried that down, through our families. And I'm sure there's loads of black people who are going to be watching this who understand or have had this happen to them, where their parents have said, if you don't stop crying, I'm going to give you something to cry about. Okay? We've been trained to numb our emotion. I've even heard people, other black people shaming each other, saying, oh, stop being so emotional, you're too emotional. Almost like having emotions, it's like a negative thing. That's how we've been trained. And when we do that, okay, we become disconnected from our humanity. We become disconnected from ourselves. Therefore, if you're disconnected from yourself, how are you going to know what you need? if you're disconnected from yourself, how are you going to be able to set boundaries? If you're disconnected from yourself, how are you going to know what's safe and what's not safe? So to give you an example around emotional sobriety, is it Krishna? Krishna? Yeah, I hope I've got your name correctly. To give you an example of emotional sobriety, last week I did some live streams around anger. Okay. Now, I always say to people that anger is not your enemy. Anger is your ally. Okay. And anger is your ally because anger is there to tell you who's safe, what boundaries have been crossed, where the pain is, who is causing the pain, all of that kind of stuff. So when you feel angry about something, that's your humanity, that's your emotions telling you, can you please listen to me? Can you please pay attention? Okay? Can you please pay attention? Can you please listen to me? So emotional sobriety is having the awareness to not immediately suppress your anger, okay, because that's what we've been taught. Emotional sobriety, hi V, thanks for joining. Emotional sobriety means that you're going to observe the anger and you have a relationship with your anger because you're going to pay attention. Like, okay, my anger this week has been about, police brutality or about the fact that black people are being disproportionately dying or whatever from COVID-19 because of the lack of care, not because of anything genetic that we're predisposed to die from it, but because we're not getting the care that we're supposed, because of structural racism, basically. So that's what I mean about emotional sobriety. Okay, so that's just like one example. It's about having that relationship with yourself. So you don't see your emotion as something to be suppressed, and just to be clear as well, like, the whole thing around your emotions as well is something that for us as black people, for me, it's a primary thing that I teach the ladies in my circle. I have a book club at the moment. We're currently studying this book here, Bell Hooks All About Love. The next session is going to be this Saturday. And I'm actually building out a mastermind as well at the moment. So there's a massive library with all the live streams and stuff that I do. These live streams don't always stay up, on my social media. I take them down, put them in the library. They're all categorized with worksheets and audios and all of that good stuff. And that's going to be going live at the end of this week. So I always say in the book club, in the circles that I have with the women, giving them permission to be able to have honest conversations about how they feel about things, being able to define and be clear about how they're feeling, and then we unpick it. Like, why are they feeling that? Is it something that's happened in the present, or is it something that's happened in the past that's triggering what's happening in the present? There are so many different things around our emotion, and I think a lot of us call each other, and I'm putting this in quotation marks, over emotional. It's not because we're over emotional, it's because we don't have a space to be able to share and understand our emotion. That's why so many of us can't deal with our emotions, because we don't know how to process it. We're not taught how to process it. So therefore it becomes like a pressure cooker. So when one little thing happens, we might overreact to something. In recovery, we say, if you're hysterical about something, it's historical. Okay? If you're hysterical about something, it means it's historical. So the next time something happens and you just feel this rage and that's why black people are so angry at the moment as well, because it's not just one thing. The rage that we have, okay, goes back centuries. It goes back centuries. And for our ancestors, showing emotion could have got them killed on the plantations. Okay, real talk. For a lot of our ancestors, they could have been killed for showing emotion. And that behavior, that survival technique has been passed down to us. Okay, so Krishna is saying, wow, thank you so much, because this information is very timely and relevant for all of us. Thank you for saying that. It's good for me to know, so that it's good for me to keep on track and know, that you're finding value in it. So I'm really grateful for that. So yeah, just going back to what I was saying about trust, okay? So we have to also be able to have those conversations about the fact that a lot of us were hurt by people that look like us, the fact that it was internalized racism, it's self-hate, acting out, all of that kind of stuff. And, we're holding on to all of these things, V. Yes, we're holding on to all of these things and we don't know how to process them. So therefore, the more we don't process those things, the harder it is for us to trust people that look like us, because we don't understand our own pain. We don't understand our own pain. So what recovery has given me, as well as giving me the insight and the understanding of how powerful my emotions can be, I'm now empowering the ladies in my group, in my mastermind, in the book club, to show their own emotion and to understand their own emotion and to not apologize for it. They come into the space, we do a feelings check-in. I even have a chart for them with all the different feelings on there, from rage to peace and not only do they understand what their feelings are trying to tell them, but they also understand what they need. There are different things in there. And it's about us really beginning to get back in touch with our humanity. You can't trust other people if you don't trust yourself. That's another thing. Because a lot of us are so shut down and so numb, we can't trust other people because we don't trust ourselves. We don't know how to trust ourselves. Again, because we've got all this trauma and all this pain going on, we're constantly in survival mode. Okay, we're constantly in survival mode, and you can't be productive. You can't be productive. It's hard to have relationships. It's hard to be at peace when you've got so much chaos and drama going on. The whole world is in step one at the moment. Okay, the whole world is in step one at the moment. We're talking about recovery. And black people, the reason why black people are in so much pain at the moment, we don't understand what it means to have a rock bottom. We don't understand what it means to have a rock bottom because we live on the rock. We live inside a rock bottom. For a lot of black people, we live inside the rock bottom. So we don't know what that means. So it's difficult for us to even get onto step one. Okay, it's difficult for us to even get onto step one in terms of recovery because we're just trying to survive. We're just trying to survive the rock bottom. We live in the rock bottom. We're trying to survive the rock bottom, and we just exist there. We just exist there. So we don't have any hope. We don't know how to get above that. We don't know how to get above that. So that's the reason why so many of us find it hard to trust. Okay, we find it hard to trust because we don't have the resources. We're in survival mode all the time. So, recovery has taught me that in order to learn how to trust other people, I had to first learn how to trust myself. Okay, I had to learn how to trust something bigger than myself. I had to learn how to trust the process. I had to trust that there was something bigger than me. Okay, I had to trust that there was something bigger than me that was going to guide me through this process. And at the time, I was terrified. I was really scared. I was like, I don't know. There was something going on inside me, and now I know that whether you want to call it God, or whether you want to call it spirit, whether you want to call it universe, I believe it's my higher power, my ancestors. There was something going on inside me that was like, you're doing this. You don't know why at the moment, and if I tell you what you're going to be doing, you ain't going to do it. So you just need to trust the process. And I was really scared. And at the time, I just thought that I was going through that process because I needed to get out of, the dysfunctional relationship that I was in at the time. But little did I know it was so much bigger than that, because here I am 10 years later on a live stream talking about my recovery. So it's so much bigger than that, but I had to learn to trust. And I had to be willing to just, and it was so excruciating because, my life was riddled with disappointments and upsets and abandonment and all of that stuff. So I didn't want to trust anybody. I didn't want to trust anything. I was too angry. I was too hurt. I was too upset. I was too vulnerable. But there was something, that fire, that's something that's in all of us, not just in me, it's in all of us, that just said to me, you just need to go here. You need to speak to this person. You just need to do this. You need to read this book. And it literally was, it was like I was blind. It was really weird. It's like I was blind and something was holding my hand, i.e. my ancestors, and it just guided me to all the right people and all the right things. And that's what I had to do. And even in doing that, I have a lot more trust in black people now. I have a lot more trust in black people. I have a lot more compassion for my people, because I understand now. I understand it through a different lens. I understand it through I've processed a lot of my racial trauma. I've raged in so many therapy sessions. I've cried in a lot of therapy sessions. I've cussed in doing step work and all. I've been through and still processing a lot of stuff. But the reason why I can now hold space for other black people, while I can now trust other black people and hold other black people while they're being vulnerable, is because I now understand, and I'm able to hold space for them in a way that that space was not able to be held for me, because it just wasn't available at that time when I started. So it's amazing that my recovery now has given me permission to now hold a space for people that I wasn't able to hold that space. So the space was not able to be held for me. I suppose it's held for me now in different spaces. I'm still having therapy. I still go to meetings and stuff like that. And so I'm still, I have people I have a circle. I have people in my life now that hold space for me. And that's what keeps my cup full. That's what keeps my energy going, so that I can get on these live streams and share and empower. And also the ladies in my group, I can pour into them. I have one-on-one clients. And I have, I do groups as well, with the book club and stuff, which is amazing. And I can pour into them because I'm getting poured into. And this is what's really, really important. So I really encourage anyone, if you work predominantly with black people, I cannot encourage you enough to do your own work, especially around this cultural stuff. Do your own work, because if you do your own work, you're going to be able to serve your community from a much more compassionate place. And things are not going to bother you as much as they did before, because you're not going to find yourself getting triggered by all of that stuff, because you're doing the work, So it's really important. So that's number 3. Okay, you learn to trust by trusting. Okay. Number 4, compassion trumps positivity. Okay. Number 4 is compassion trumps positivity. Now, the reason why I say that is because sometimes we can get stuck in that place of, stop being so negative, you got to be positive and all the rest of it. And sometimes it's used, like telling people to just be positive can be like a shaming tactic, and you may not intend that to be the place, but when you just keep telling people to be positive, how it can be heard is, my pain is not seen. You don't want to hear my pain. My pain is not being heard. I'm not being seen. You're not hearing me. You're not understanding me. You're just telling me to be positive, which could mean ignore the pain. Okay, it could low-key mean ignore the pain, or I'm not here for your pain. I can only be around you if you're being positive. Okay, and I see a lot of people doing this. I see a lot of coaches doing it. I see mentors doing it, and they don't realize that when you're just constantly telling people to be positive, for us as black people, then, oh my God, we so need to be seen. We're so invisible in society. Like, clearly with everything going on, we are so invisible in society. And so your clients, your people need to be seen. They need to be heard. They need to be seen. Whether we're talking about families, or whether we're talking about community, if you're a business person, whether we're talking about, if you hold a book club, if you mentor people or whatever, just be careful when you're talking about positivity. Okay, positivity and compassion are very different things. When you're compassionate to people, it means that you have an acceptance of them for who they are, wherever they are. You have a compassion and acceptance for who they are and where they are. Okay, and we need that. A lot of us are suffering. A lot of us have been carrying this crap for years and not being seen and not being heard, and just being told to just get on with it. You got to be the strong black woman. You got to be the strong black. Oh, you're really strong. You can. We're tired of being strong. Stop telling black people that need to be. Stop it, because we've been strong for hundreds of years. Okay, and it's time for us to put that stuff down. It's time for us to put that stuff down. And recovery has really given me permission to embrace that. Recovery has really given me permission to embrace that. The thing is about the whole thing around compassion as well is excuse me, is to find a space. Sorry, it's to find a space that is available for you to be compassionate. Because I think a lot of us will go to places where we think we're going to get compassion, and we think we're going to be seen, and we think we're going to be heard, and it's run. The spaces might be run by people that just can't hear you. I can't tell you how many people have I've spoken to that, even with all of the stuff going on now, they'll go to white spaces, so-called spirituality spaces, so-called meditation, or whatever it is, so-called whatever spirituality or positive, whatever it is. And the conversation about, black pain is just not allowed. Okay, black pain is just not allowed. And so it's important when you're looking for spaces, if you're in recovery, if you're looking for meetings and all of that kind of stuff, look to see who's in those meetings. Are those meetings diverse? Are there other people in those meetings having honest conversations about race? Are you able to talk to your sponsor about race? Are you able to talk to your mentor, your business coach, whoever it is? Are you able to talk to those people honestly about race? And if you can't, you need to be having honest conversations about what's going on with your recovery. Because if you're a black person or you're a person of colour and you can't talk about race, then there's a massive chunk missing from your recovery process. And this is one of the reasons why a lot of people do end up, when they come to me for this stuff, people that are in recovery, this is the bit that's missing. This is a bit that's missing from their recovery, because at the end of the day, we're still living in a system that's oppressive. We're still living in a system that's abusive. So, white people tend to come to, I'm generalising obviously, so stick with me with this. So generally, white people will come into the recovery rooms with whatever issue, whatever pain they've got going on, and they're acting out, whether it's drinking or drugging or whatever it is. And ultimately they get to, when they work the steps and ultimately they get to those pain points, what happened in their childhood and all that kind of stuff, they process it. And, they might come to the meetings to maintain their thing, but generally they can get on with it. Okay? But for us as black people, we're constantly being re-traumatized. We're constantly being abused. And these are people in positions of power because it's social. Okay, when you've got the likes of Trump and you've got the likes of Boris Johnson or whoever acting out, and as far as I'm concerned, they're all the same, just because they're not, they've got different ways of acting out, but they're all the same as far as I'm concerned. The racism is alive and well in the UK. It's not on the same, it's not the same as in the US, but it is in the UK, trust and believe that, okay? There are not enough spaces for us to be able to do this work. So that's the reason why so many people end up, working with me, or end up, why sometimes they think their recovery is not working, because they haven't yet understood, or they haven't got to that point yet where they understand that, oh my God, okay, the racism bit is the thing that's missing. The racism bit is this is what is triggering the pain. So I can't stop acting out. I can't stop acting out because my pain is being triggered and I don't really understand, And it's the vulnerability. It's the vulnerability of being black. It's the powerlessness of living under the system of racism. Okay, it's all of that powerlessness, that sense of, oh my God, I don't want to see another hashtag. And the powerlessness because nothing's really being done about it. People might do a march like they're doing at the moment, or there's another hashtag on it. I've seen they've got a thing at the moment as well now on social media where people are blacking out their screens and all the rest of it. I get all of that. It's people trying to create a sense of solidarity. They're trying to make sense of doing something in the powerlessness. But ultimately, the internal work needs to be done. The internal work needs to be done. Don't get trapped into thinking that going on another march or or creating another hashtag or whatever that's not going to do the work for you. Ultimately, you've got to do the racial sobriety work, which means looking at the relationship that you have with your blackness. That's ultimately what racial sobriety is. Looking at your racial identity, exploring your racial identity. What belongs to you and what belongs to white supremacy? Do you have that white supremacy voice in your head telling you that you're too black, or that your hair's too nappy, or that you can't, your curves are ugly, or your nose is too broad? This is all white supremacy thinking that we're recycling. They're going to have a lot more impact on change as opposed to putting up a hashtag. Okay, and I'm not dismissing people that do that, but what I'm saying is that stuff is temporary. It's only going to be temporary relief. We have to, as far as racial sobriety goes and the whole thing around, around recovery, this is something that has to be a lifetime commitment. This is a lifetime commitment. This is a daily commitment. This is an hourly commitment. So this is something that you have to build as a legacy to pass on. The stuff that I'm doing, I'm doing all this stuff at the moment. I'm writing some books, and that the Black Steps, big book is coming. I am writing that. I'm writing the steps, as it relates to us. So look out for all of that stuff. But you have to do the work so that you can leave some sort of legacy. And this is the legacy that I want to leave. It's about legacy, and legacy It's got to be tangible. You know, you can't pass down a hashtag. A hashtag is not gonna, it's not gonna change lives. A hashtag. What changes lives is you doing your internal work. Okay, it's you doing your internal work. Okay, and this is where it comes to number 5. Okay, so number 4, compassion can trump positivity. Number 5, sobriety requires softness. Okay, number 5, sobriety requires softness. Now I know there's going to be a lot of you that are going to be like, you know, that might be looking at the screen going, what's she talking about? Sobriety requires softness. The reason why I say that is because it's important to understand that this being constantly in survival mode, being constantly attacked, being constantly abused, being constantly put down by sobriety, all of being around this anti-blackness all the time, it creates a hardness in us. Because the anger, the rage, the trauma, the exhaustion, the tiredness, it's hard for us to connect to joy. It's hard for us to connect to our feminine energy as women, as black women as well. It's hard for us to connect to our feminine energy when we're constantly in a state of rage and fear. You know, but when you do this work, you know, it's important. When we're doing this work to kind of reintegrate with our humanity, it requires us to be soft. It requires us to embrace our softness. And this is why it's important, like I was saying before, is to find a safe space, to find a safe place, to find whether if you're in recovery, find a safe home group. You know, if your recovery network is not able to do that, find a you can join my you can inbox me. Go to heal.juneallen.net. That's heal.juneallen.net. That's heal.juneallen.net. There are several different ways that you can work with me so that you can find a safe black space for you to explore, you know, and grieve the loss of your softness. Okay, and this is something that I have to ask myself and talk to. This is something that I have to renew all the time, because my default is survival, hardness, wall. You know, I have to be defensive because of this, and that's understandable. But when we do that, when we put up these walls so that we can protect ourselves, we also, you know, not only do we protect we might be doing these things to protect ourselves from white supremacy or whatever, but when we put those defenses up, we also keep people out. We also shut people out. We shut out our children. We shut out our husbands. We shut out our lovers. We shut out our friends. Because with this hardness, this state of being that we have to hold on to because we're constantly being triggered all the time, is having an impact. So it's important to make space or find spaces for you to embrace being soft. Even the word softness makes me feel soft. You know, think about the things that make you feel soft, and where can you find spaces? Where can you find things? Are there events? Are there things that you like to do? Are there crafts? You know, are there some sort of creative things that you like to do that make you feel soft? You know, and embrace those things. And it might be that when you start to indulge in those things again, you might find, you know, grief come up. You know, you might feel upset. You might feel that you want to cry because you didn't realize how much. One of the quotes that I always say to people as well is, sometimes we don't know how much we're hurting until we find a safe place to feel. Okay? Sometimes we don't know how much we're hurting until we find a safe place to feel. And that's why so many of us, especially as black women, we hold on to that stuff. We hold on to it. We hold on to the pain. We hold on to all of it because, again, the anger and stuff becomes our armor. Our anger becomes our armor from, you know, relationships that have failed, from, you know, from the anti-blackness that we're seeing all the time in white supremacy, the fact that we're invisible, the fact that we've got trauma from our families, you know, the mother wound, the father wound, the sibling wounds, all of that stuff. So we hold on to, you know, that pain, that hardness becomes an armor. But it's not serving us as a community because it's hard for us to attach to each other, to connect to each other, to love on each other because of that hardness. It's difficult to do that. You know, so if we're going to remain or become emotionally, racially sober, we have to, you know, so our sobriety requires softness. Okay, you can't have one without the other. We have to be vulnerable. We have to allow ourselves to be vulnerable. Okay, so that's number 5. Number 6, you can't do it alone. Okay, you can't do this stuff alone. No matter. Now, I've worked with so many people, and I've heard this quite a lot. people that have tried to do this stuff by themselves. They've read loads of self-help books. They've listened to loads of podcasts. They've read loads of stuff on personal development and all the rest of it. And they're trying to do it by themselves because they're scared to go into other spaces with other black people and be vulnerable because of they might get judged or fear of being shamed or whatever it is. But you can't do this work by yourself. So again, it goes back to what I was saying earlier about you have to trust. Trust requires trust. Trust requires trust. You have to somehow pluck up the courage to trust somebody. And even if that person lets you down, because they're human, you find the courage to go and trust somebody else and try somebody else. I say this all the time because people will say, oh, I went to that therapist or I went to that group and they did this to me or that to me. And so I don't trust black people because this is maybe one or two or even if it's 3 experiences, you keep searching until you find what and who you need. Okay, you keep searching until you find what and who you need because you can't do this stuff by yourself. You stop kidding yourself that you can do this by yourself. You can't do it by yourself. Okay, you can't do it by yourself and you can't do it for free as well. Let me add that to it. You can't do it by yourself and you can't do it for free. Okay, you can't do it for free. It's just impossible. You need people and you need some money. You need people and you need some money. I don't care if it is £10 that you spent to buy the book or whether it's £50 you've paid to do a class. You need to start building a little fund, okay, so that you can do this healing work. I say this to people all the time. And there are some people that this type of work goes on the back burner because because obviously they've got other bills and stuff like that. But then you're just in pain all the time. You're just in pain all the time. As far as I'm concerned, the state that black people are in at the moment, putting a little bit of money aside, even if it is only £10 a month, okay, you need to be putting some money aside towards your well-being. Real talk, you need to be putting some money aside for your well-being because as black people, we are at war. We are at war. Okay? And so you need to have some sort of money to be putting something aside so that you can be taking care of yourself. Even if you're going in recovery rooms, you have to put in 7th tradition. Or you have to buy books. You can't get away from it. Stop thinking that you can do this stuff by yourself or that you can heal for free. Healing is not free. And if you don't have the money at this time, okay, to pay for something, if you can't invest money, you invest time. Okay, so if you cannot invest money right at this moment, and I know that obviously with COVID and everything, people are worrying about bills and worrying about work. I get it. So for the moment, if you cannot invest money, you invest time. You invest time to read. You invest time to go on the internet. I have got so much free information. So if you're on social media, okay, there's loads of stuff on my timeline. There's loads of stuff on my Facebook page, my Instagram page. I also have, I've got YouTube as well. They're all at Yard of Greatness. I've got so much information. If you cannot afford to invest money, invest time. Yes, Angie, you have to invest in yourself. Otherwise, the healing is not going to happen. You need to invest time and money. Real talk. It's just inevitable. And one of the amazing things that happens when you get into groups, okay, and some of the ladies are on my live stream now, they're watching, so and they'll validate this for me. There's something about being in a safe space with other black women. I love serving the ladies in my group. I love that group. I feel so blessed to have them because what's happening is they get to share their truth. Once they feel safe. And they're sharing their truth, and they're not afraid to be vulnerable. They're not allowed to bare their soul. And what happens in those moments is that the trust is starting to be built, and you can see that the love that they start to have for each other and for themselves, because they're being heard and they're being seen. That's what happens in groups that are boundaried and that are safe. People begin to trust each other a lot more, but you've got to be willing to have difficult conversations. And then the group, and I hold that space. I hold the boundaries in that space, so the ladies they know that they're not going to be shamed for what they say. They're not going to be shamed for what they say. They're not going to be put down for having feelings. They're not going to be put down for having tears. And sometimes they'll start crying and then they'll start apologizing. And I tell them straight, do not apologize in this space for having tears. And we've had a lot of tears in that space, especially over the last couple of weeks with everything that's been going on. There is no judgment. There is no judgment at all. And that is so important. That is so important. And what happens is when you're in a group and you start to share and you start to feel and you start to identify and people start saying things, and then somebody else will say, oh my God, I felt like that. And I thought I was the only one. And you start to internalize the goodness that's coming out of the group. You internalize the strength from the group. And I tell the ladies all the time, when we do a meditation at the end of the group, and I say to them, when you go off into your lives and your families and you might be feeling upset or whatever, just remember that your ancestors are behind you and the ladies and the energy from this group is behind you. You're not by yourself. And that gives them, that empowers them to make decisions that maybe they might not have been able to make before because they were too scared. And if they make that decision about something, they'll come back to the group the next week and then they'll start talking about, I did this and I was a bit scared. And, it's just having that strength. It's just having that strength. Hi, Sonia. Thanks for joining. Thanks for my happy birthday. For those of you that have just joined, my name is June Allen and I am the founder of the Art of Greatness at juneallen.net. And I teach African-centered self-love, sisterhood and sobriety. And it's my 10-year sobriety birthday today. 10 years sober, 10 years sober from addictive relationships. I'm not a substance person. I'm a people. My thing is either I'm addicted to people or I'm chronically avoidant. That's my thing. People, I was addicted to people. Well, still am. I'm just, I'm in recovery from addiction to people. So thank you everyone who's joining. So, where was I? Yeah, so you can't do it by yourself, okay? So you need to build your network, okay? That's number 6. You can't do it by yourself. Number 7, oh my God, having black only spaces is everything. Having black only spaces is everything. And you know why it's everything? Because we can focus on ourselves and we don't have to worry about upsetting white people. We haven't got to worry about the white gaze. We ain't got to worry about white people coming in saying, oh, all lives matter and all that shit. You don't have to worry about none of that. It's about us. It's about our feelings, our situation, our perspective. And this is why I'm so specific when I talk to black people, black women. This is why it's important for me to be specific, because those sisters in the group, they need to know that I'm talking to them. That's why I don't always say people of colour. I talk about black people. Yeah? There are some people of colour I know that watch my live streams and whatnot, but primarily I am talking about black people because we're the ones that are getting hammered in this thing. Okay? Sonia's laughing at me. We're the ones that are getting hammered. Oh my God, Instagram's going to cut off in 2 minutes. Okay, but I'll restart the live stream again because obviously I've still got some stuff to go through. I've been rabbiting on for nearly an hour. I can't believe it's gone so quickly. But oh my God, right. So let me just plug in. Now obviously my phone now has started to die on me because I'm chatting away. Okay. So that's in there now. So if Instagram cuts off, just come back into the live stream again because I'm gonna carry on. So people of colour spaces are everything, and I do not apologise for it. And I've had people say to me, why is it just for black? There are plenty of other places where other people can go. Okay, there are loads of places where white people can go and do their work. No, the space is not for white people to come and learn. And I don't apologise for that because I've had people say that to me. Oh, I come on your page and I just want to learn and all the rest of it. But my spaces is not for you. The narrative is not for you. And I don't make any apologies for that. If there are white people on the page that want to learn about racism, you need to go and pick up a book and read the book, because the space is not, my narrative is not for white people. My narrative is for black women, predominantly for black women. Okay? And I don't make any apologies for that, because at the end of the day, we have issues that we need to be talking about. We need to be able to have safe spaces to be able to Lorraine's laughing at me. We need to have our own spaces to be able to share what we need to share and cuss when we need to cuss. right? But we do it in our own spaces, so that we can then come to the solution. That's the whole point of why I do this. That's the whole point of why the spaces need to be boundaried, because we need to have that space to be able to rage and cry and be vulnerable without people saying to us all this foolishness about whatever's going on. Okay? Okay, so I've got 4 seconds. Okay, share to IGTV. So I just need to just bear with me on Facebook. I've got to okay, I'm just going to put this in really quickly. 10-year anniversary. Okay, I'll have to update the topic in a minute. So let me just go live in a minute. Okay. Okay, so I'm live again. So let me just put, is it going to let me do it? No. 10-year sobriety birthday. Okay. So, right, so for those of you that have just joined, I've just done that, just read on myself. Hi everyone. For those of you that have just joined, my name is June Allen from, I've just forgotten what my brain's gone completely fried. Okay, I am the founder of the Art of Greatness at juneallen.net. And I'm so grateful today because I'm sharing 10 things I've learned in recovery. Okay, so I am a mum, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a retreat facilitator, I'm also a student psychotherapist, and I absolutely love what I do. Okay, so I teach African-centered self-love, sisterhood, and sobriety. So before I got cut off from Instagram, I was sharing some ways that, some powerful ways that that things that I've learned since I've been in recovery. Okay, so the last thing that I was talking about was number 7, which was POC. I shouldn't even call it POC. Black recovery spaces are everything. Okay, black recovery spaces are everything, and I don't apologise for it. And it is important to have these spaces for us to be able to unpick it and to deal with the trauma and to deal with the stuff in our community. I don't want to have those conversations with people that don't relate. Okay, and so it was important for me to really have those discussions so that we can really niche down and have those conversations so that people really understand what's going on. So yeah, and it's I've been in spaces before. There was this I won't say the name of the recovery fellowship, obviously, but there was a recovery fellowship that I was in at one point, and they had a conference, and I kind of made the suggestion that we wanted to have like a people of colour space, okay, for the conference. So, but I was trying to explain to them that, look, that space needs to be boundaried, okay? It should be people of colour only in that space. But because it was run by, the committee was white people, they were like, oh no, it shouldn't be, a closed space because, there might be white people that have, that have partners or whatever, but they just didn't get it. They just didn't get it. And I just felt so angry. But then what happened was, it was interesting because even though I did go to this conference that I went to, the conference that they had, and what happened was exactly what I knew was going to happen. What happened was there were people of colour that were sharing their experience in the group. There were some white people in there as well. And what happened was they almost started apologising. They were like low-key apologising to the white people in the group for having feelings. They were saying things like, oh, I don't want to offend anyone, but... And it's just like, you shouldn't have to apologise for how you feel. And this is the reason why black spaces are important. This is the reason why having boundary black spaces is important, because there's always some element of white centering going on. And at the end of the day, like I always say, white people aren't doing this work. They're not doing this work at the depth that it needs to be done in order to create change. They might, even if they do read a book, are they really doing it? Are they really going to work their racial sobriety and recovery like I'm explaining to you? They're not, because it doesn't impact them. It doesn't impact them the same way. And so, this whole thing around white fragility and white centering and white feelings becoming more important and all of that kind of stuff, I ain't got time for none of that. I ain't got time for none of that. Okay, so it is important, okay, that we feel emotionally safe to be able to share what needs to be shared, and that means black only spaces. Okay, or if we're talking about recovery, you know, in recovery it normally comes out as like POC only spaces. So, you know, and they can be just as powerful as well. I've had some really amazing experiences in POC spaces, and one of the things that I will say actually about how painful the recovery, not how painful, how powerful the recovery spaces are that I've been in, you know, is really hearing black men be vulnerable. And I'm going to try really hard not to cry when I share this story, because it just, even now I'm just sort of feeling emotional. Those spaces for me have been so powerful, because seeing black men be vulnerable and share honestly, it allowed me to connect to black men in a way that I wasn't able to connect to them before, because they're sharing their truth, they're sharing their honesty. And, you know, there is something really powerful about just hearing black men speak. And I get that, you know, black men in particular, you know, I mean, there's a whole thing about boys don't cry and men not being vulnerable and all that. There's that anyway. But for black men, you know, it's even harder. You know, it's even harder. And so it's really, really important for us to, it was really important for me in those spaces to be able to hear that vulnerability and see that vulnerability, and to be able to honour those men that were doing that. And it touched something in me. And there were many times in those meetings where I just had to turn my sound off, and I would just be weeping in the meeting. I would just be weeping in those meetings, just hearing black men share their stories. And I have such deep compassion, and I have such a deep sense of love now for black men, more than I used to have before, because I've had the opportunity to you know, to share and to witness, you know, what's going on for them. And this is how things change. This is how things change. This is how things change when it comes to us as a community, because we see each other in a different way. We start to see our own humanity, because you can bet your life, if you've got, like I was saying before about all that hardness and all the rest of it that we have, you know, the whole thing around sobriety requires softness. If you're stuck in that place of anger and upset and rage because you haven't found a safe space to be able to process it, you know, it's inevitable that stuff is going to it's going to show up in the relationship. If you don't understand it, and a lot of it's probably going on at an unconscious level, you know, it's going to show up in your relationship, in your love relationships. It's going to show up. It's inevitable. But once you're doing your own work, especially when it's got the racial sobriety component to it, so you understand racism and stuff like that, you're less likely to, that stuff is less likely to act out in the relationship, because you see your relationship from within a different lens, and that is so powerful. That is so powerful. So yeah, I mean, recovery in racial sobriety has really been amazing from that perspective, and having those black only spaces to be able to witness those things has just been really amazing. I've actually built some really great friendships as well with black men in recovery through doing that, and it's just been really great. It's just been amazing. So yeah, so Marie's saying, yes, I agree with June. I have too heard from a few black men speak and been blown away. It touched me. Yeah, it's just amazing. It's amazing when you start hearing black men speaking like that. It really is amazing. Okay, so that's number 7. So number 8, okay. Number 8, the thing that I've learned in recovery that's important is you have to read about black psychology. Okay, you have to read about black psychology, black therapists, all that kind of stuff. It's important to read the work of our scholars. Now, the 2 that I always suggest to people all the time is, number 1, you want the ISIS papers, okay? You want the ISIS papers, and please stay tuned, because I'm going to be doing a live class. I'm going to do a workshop on where we can dive deep into some of her, because this book is basically a collection of essays that she wrote in the 1970s about what not the what of white supremacy, but the why of white supremacy. Okay, the what of white supremacy. You need to be following Neely Fuller's work. Neely Fuller, and his work can be found at producejustice.com. Okay, producejustice.com. That's Neely Fuller's work. So he's going to tell you, his work tells you tells you the what of racism. Okay. Oh gosh, yeah, Amos Wilson. How can I forget? That's coming. Oh my God, all my phones are starting to, the batteries are going. Just give me 1 second. Give me 1 second. All my batteries are going on my devices. Okay, let me get the other one. Okay, so, Amos Wilson is another level, actually. I do love Amos Wilson as well. Thank you for for putting his name up there, Angie. But these are the go-to people I'd normally go to. So right, so Neely Fuller is What is Racism, and he is the guy. The reason why I say Neely Fuller is because he was the guy that coined the whole concept around racism being a system. It was his book, okay? So you need to go to producejustice.com and get Neely Fuller's book. Dr. Wilson's book tells you the why. She talks about the psychology of racism. Why is it that white supremacy is here? How it shows up. She talks about narcissism. She talks about black fear. She talks about white fear of genetic annihilation. She talks about all of it. Amos Wilson is a don. I do love Amos Wilson as well. So Angie's talking about the falsification of African consciousness. Again, Amos Wilson's work is very psychology based as well, and also his work is also about empowerment. I've got that, I can't remember the name of it now. There's one about, I can't remember the name of it, but he talks about economics and stuff as well. His work is amazing. I've got to update my book list about all of this stuff, because there's so many, apart from these two that I mainly focus on, and Amos Wilson's got some amazing stuff as well. So if you're interested in any of that stuff, send me an email, info@guardianofgreatness.com, and I will send you. I'll need to update my book list and send that out as well, so that you can get a copy of that. So of all the the books that I suggest that you need to do. But yeah, you need to read about black psychology, because at the end of the day, a lot of these, even a lot of black therapists don't always understand the cultural context, because at the end of the day, the training is very Eurocentric based. Okay, this is why when who you're choosing to learn from is really important. It's not don't just choose that person just because they're black. That's a good start, but you also need to get into the conversation around, okay, well, is this person, are they really culturally aware? Do they really understand it from a cultural context? Do they understand white supremacy? All of that kind of stuff. Make sure that you do that, okay? So when you're talking about your recovery, when you're talking about your personal growth or whatever it is, make sure all of that stuff is included, okay? So that you can have an understanding of how white supremacy has impacted you. And this is the reason why I've been able to join the two. I've been able to connect the stuff that I've learned in recovery along with the cultural context, because I've read a lot of those books. Also Bell Hooks as well is amazing. That's why I chose to do the book club, because it's good to have all of those things. So make sure you do your black psychology, okay? So number 9, okay, and this one might sting a little bit. This one might be a little bit painful, but this is something that I had to learn very early on, that not all black people want to do this work. Not all black people want to do this work, okay? And shaming other black people for not wanting to do it doesn't work either. You just have to leave them, let them get on with it. You just have to focus on yourself, okay? Not all black people want to do this work. And so this is one of the reasons why, if you're in recovery or you're in the personal growth space and you're looking to, you want to work with other black people, don't just assume just because they're black that they want to do the work. So I always say to people, especially if I'm in recovery or whatever, I'm just saying, look, this is what I'm about. This is what I want to talk about in my outreach calls or whatever. Are you available to have these sorts of conversations? And if they are, then they'll say. And if not, then they won't. Because, if they're not doing this work, and I've experienced being in meetings, it's been so funny. I've experienced being in spaces and, there might be somebody doing a guest chair, because sometimes you get people in recovery that will come and share their experience and stuff in recovery for that particular fellowship for 10 minutes or whatever. And sometimes you'll be in POC spaces, and I've seen it. Somebody will go and ask a person of colour to come and be the speaker, who's not doing the racial sobriety work, who doesn't understand the racial sobriety work, and they're just talking about their recovery, but they've got nothing to really contribute to that POC space, because that person was chosen inappropriately. Okay, so you just got to make sure that when you're in those spaces, or who you're talking to is emotionally available to have those conversations about race. Okay, when we're talking about race and addiction and recovery, is that person actually doing the work, or is that person just a person of colour who happens to be in recovery? It's a difference. Okay, so it's important to understand that not all black people want to do this work. Okay, don't shame other black people because they don't want to do it, because they're just in a different place. It's okay. And just find your people, find your tribe, okay? And that's how you're going to heal, by being with other people that actually want to do this work. That's what makes it powerful, okay? And the 10th and final step is just to remember that every frigging step counts, Okay, there have been so many times in my recovery where I've just been like, do you know what? I just don't want to do this anymore. It's too painful. I can't be bothered. It's too much like hard work. I just, there've been so many times where I just thought I just can't do it. And literally I have had to crawl through my recovery. There were some days where I've literally had to crawl. There've been so many days where I've literally been in so much pain that I've just allowed myself to just lie on the sofa or just get in bed and just stay present and just allow the energy to just move through my body, or just allow it to pass. Just feel the grief or whatever. You just have to take that's why I always say, to my ladies, what baby steps matter. Baby steps matter. Okay? Baby steps matter. And with all of this stuff that's going on with black people, and all of this stuff that's going on with COVID, and all of this racial trauma, like, sometimes you can just get so overwhelmed by all of that you end up not wanting to do any of it because it just becomes so overwhelming. That's why I always say to people, like, just one small thing. And I said this to the ladies in the group last week. Do not underestimate the power of sometimes just getting out of bed and having a shower is amazing. That's sometimes the best that you can do, and that is more than enough. Just having that, just allowing the water to clean your body, and there's something cleansing about water anyway. Our ancestors have always spoken up about that, about water being cleansing. Sometimes that is enough. Okay, do not underestimate those small things that you can do for yourself, whether it is just having a shower or making yourself a nice meal or hugging your children. Okay, having a nap.